these Guard members home, if you are not going to put them to their full and best use, that is meeting an emergency or a crisis, if they are simply political window dressing for your campaign in the Republican primary, then let them come back home to their families, to their homes, to their careers, and to their communities. That is the least that we can do for those who've been willing to put their lives on the line for this country and serve us so honorably.
Leading off our discussion tonight is Beto O'Rourke, former Democratic congressman representing El Paso, Texas. He is now running for governor of Texas. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. What can you tell us about what you found at the border, the situation with the National Guard there?
Lawrence, the first thing that I want to tell you is that these men and women are the absolute best of us. They signed up to serve this state and this country. They were there in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey, the biggest storm to ever hit this state, drowned communities like Port Arthur and Rockport and Houston, Texas. They've been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. They know what they've signed up for, and they're willing to serve, and they do so honorably and admirably. But 10,000 of them have been called up with 10 days notice, forced to leave family, jobs, kids, their communities, to be mere window dressing for the governor's reelection campaign. Those aren't my words. Those are the things they have told me. Their pay has been delayed. The governor funded this by cutting their earned tuition benefit. This is how they afford to go to college.
Gosh.
He cut that in half. They have not been properly equipped, and most of them that I've spoken to have not encountered a migrant or an undocumented border crosser in the 3 or 4 months that they've been there. And Lawrence, one of the young men that I spoke to yesterday told me that he was one of those who requested a waiver from the governor because he's a nurse, and the hospital where he typically works needs him right now because we are undergoing a critical surge in COVID cases, and we do not have enough healthcare professionals. So he's on the border doing nothing, encountering no one, when he could be back home, literally saving the lives of the people in his community. I want us to be there to have his back and the backs of other guardsmen. And in this mission, let them come back home and reserve sending them out only for when we have a real crisis or an emergency. And what's happening on the border does not meet that bar.
The Laredo Morning Times estimates that it could cost $2 billion for this deployment. That sounds like money that could have been well spent on the power grid.
That's right. ERCOT, those are the folks who manage the grid here in Texas, say that if we hit severe weather, like the weather that shut down the grid last February, we're at a 40% generating capacity shortfall right now because the governor and the legislature did absolutely nothing to weatherize the grid and prepare us for the next extreme weather event. That money could have gone to schools where educators in Texas are underpaid by about $10,000 compared to their national counterparts. We could have supplemented and expanded Medicaid to ensure that more Texans can see a doctor or not fear dying of diabetes or the flu or a curable cancer. There are a lot of needs here that those billions of dollars could have gone to meet. This is a political ploy on the part of the governor, but the people who are paying the price beyond the taxpayers are those members of the Guard, and we need to let them come back to their families, back to their jobs, back to their communities. It's the right thing to do.
We are seeing reports tonight from the Texas Tribune and elsewhere about chaos in what is now the new voting system in Texas because of the new voting laws in Texas. Do we know if the current state of disruption affects Democratic voters and Republican voters equally?
We don't know for sure. What we do know is what's taking place is exactly what was predicted by opponents of this voter suppression bill. Lawrence, in this instance, Texas is requiring you, if you request a mail-in ballot, to use the exact same form of ID that you used when you first registered to vote. That could have been 2 years ago. It could have been 20 years ago. And if you don't remember that, your mail-in ballot request is rejected We're seeing rejection rates in some counties of up to 50%. Now, I think it's really important for those who want to make sure that they can vote in this primary election, if they are physically and from a healthcare perspective able to vote in person, to do that, because this voter suppression tactic is incredibly successful at denying people the ability to vote. We've got to find a way to overcome it. I'm hopeful, Lawrence, that the courts will enjoin this law, which is patently unconstitutional because it's denying people their equal rights under the law and the ability to vote. And I really am concerned that it's going to dissuade people from turning out. So in our campaign, we are making a commitment to reach 2 million voters over the course of February, in person at their doors, on the phone, if we can reach them there. And we're also writing letters to them as well to make sure they understand what it takes to be able to vote in Texas right now. We've got to overcome this. I wish that the Senate would have done the right thing and passed federal voting rights protection, but there is no cavalry riding to our rescue in Texas. This one is on all of us. So those who go to betofortexas.com can sign up, knock on doors with us, and make sure that we are the answer to this challenge at this moment.
Let me go back to the National Guard situation for the moment, because initially it was perceived as something that the governor was doing because of his own fear of being challenged to his extreme right by some Trumpist candidate, and he was going to have to beat back that kind of candidate in the Republican primary. Is that still the dynamic we're facing? Do you expect after the primaries, if Governor Abbott will at that point think there's no longer any need for this expenditure at the southern border?
It's interesting that you asked that question. A member of the Guard that I met with yesterday said, I just hope, Beto, that after the Republican primary is over, I can go back home, because their activation orders are for a full year away from jobs, from family, from their primary source of income. And they're just sitting in these Humvees, most of them not able really to do much of anything at all. So I think that's the best hope. But I want to make this additional point. It's not just the opportunity cost. It's not just that they're missing their families. 4 members of the Guard over the last 3 months have taken their own lives. Some of those members had asked for those waivers. One said, I have the career opportunity of a lifetime, and I want to make sure that I can take advantage of it. And instead, they denied that, and we're going to send him down to the border. He took his own life. One of the things we clearly need right now are behavioral health specialists deployed along with those members, not on phone, not by Zoom, but in those same base camps where Guardsmen are sleeping 15 to 20 to a trailer. These are the storm trailers that are deployed after hurricanes and natural disasters. They're sleeping in those together right now. COVID is running rampant, and morale is at an all-time low. So they shouldn't have to wait for a Republican primary or really anything at all, especially if this mission has no purpose. Let's get them back to their families.
And quickly before you go, you took the oath of office as a member of the House of Representatives. It's virtually word for word identical to what a United States Senator takes to protect the Constitution, to defend the Constitution of the United States. When asked about secession by the state of Texas, your senator, Ted Cruz, said he would be willing to consider it basically if the Democrats managed to pass their voting rights bill. That was his answer to that. What is your reaction to Senator Cruz's openness to the possibility of Texas trying to secede from the Union?
Unfortunately, for those of us in Texas, it's not surprising. You mentioned the power grid failure that killed hundreds of people in this state. Millions more were freezing without heat or electricity. Ted Cruz fled to Cancun. On January 6th, when we had the strongest pressure test for our democracy in our lifetimes, he was part of the sedition, encouraging people to try to overturn a lawfully, legitimately decided election. This guy does not believe in the Constitution, democracy, or rule of law. There's no reason he should be serving in a position of public trust right now. And this encouragement to possible secession in Texas is just par for the course for this guy. So not much that we can do about him right now. We're focused on the task at hand. That's running and winning this race and replacing Greg Abbott as the next governor of the state of Texas.
Beto O'Rourke, candidate for governor of Texas, thank you very much for starting off our discussions here tonight. Really appreciate it.